Hey folks, before we kick things off, just wanted to take a moment and talk about Skunk Fest. This year we actually have 2 different cities and 3 weekends. So if you go to skunkfestatx.com, you'll be able to check out the lineups, the dates, and locations. First on the list is San Antonio, Texas, August 21st at Fitzgerald's. Then, right after that, August 26th and 27th at Come and Take It Live here in Austin, Texas. And then a second weekend here in Austin at Empire Control Room on September 5th. Like I mentioned, if you'd like some more information on the lineup, locations, go to skunkfestatx.com. Hey folks, today on the podcast we talk with Mr. Stephen Vague. After getting his start in a high school jazz band, he attended the University of Texas where he played in the jazz ensemble and jazz orchestra. Since then, Stephen's been playing and recording with a number of different people, various bands, including David Glassco's 11-piece Steely Dan style group, Blue Millennium. Stephen's also played with Delbert McClinton's Muddy Waters harmonica player, Paul Oscher. We had a really cool conversation with Stephen. Talked about a number of different things and what he's been doing since things have been locked down. So it was a really great conversation to listen into. As always, Skunk would like to thank his friends at Godin Guitars and Tragan Guitars, Ernie Ball Strings, and 5 Iron Woodworks.
Perfect timing. Hello, episode 51 of Eclectic Soundtrax with Stephen Vague. Did I say your name right?
Yes, you did.
Okay. I've been known to get names completely wrong.
Right.
So and
Vague, just like the word.
And it actually says
like
it on
the
the
word.
screen, so that helps. But I did actually know your name.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Stephen, I know you as a saxophone player. You do some. I mean, you're a musician, an incredible musician. You play all the time and all kinds of different gigs and stuff like that as a professional musician. But that's not like your day gig, right? You have another job, is that correct?
No. I've kind of been trying to run away from music my entire life. Because I just never thought I could build a career around it. But it always keeps calling me back.
It's the opposite of me.
So,
I've been trying to do music and I can't seem to get a career out of it. So congratulations.
It's I just try to stay involved. There's a guitar player, Mike Barnes. He's in the group Extreme Heat. Uh-huh. And he said something to me years ago that I've always kept it as my credo or my mantra, play or die. And you just got to keep playing. You got to keep doing whatever it takes to keep playing. And if you do that, then maybe the universe will help you out and give you those opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely.
And that's worked out so far.
Yeah, well, clearly, man. I mean, you're a busy guy. I think I met you at Mesa Recording Studios when, boy, I hope I'm not wrong here. Did you play was it Los Jazz Vatos or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It's been a while.
And that's when I found out how badass you guys were. Because that album, I was so proud of that album.
Yeah, well, Rob's great. I just sat there and pushed, space bar or something. But yeah, no, Rob's definitely a great job with the mixing. And everything. It does sound incredible. And I think he had worked with Ernie, and so Ernie brought you guys in there. Ernie Durawa drumming.
Yes. I guess he had worked with. Well, he had worked with Murali, Coriel,
yep.
and Ernie.
Yeah. And so then you guys came in and you had done an album several years back, I think, right? And so this was
like 10 years previous.
Right. So this was the second album. You guys got back together, and Freddie, the trombone player, was up in Illinois or something, not in Texas, right?
Right. He had already moved to Indianapolis.
Okay.
And was able to come down for a couple of weeks and be a part of the recording. And he had, once again, he had written most of the arrangements and done a lot of the production. we trusted him to do that. He had a great ear and sense for making a good product.
Sure.
And we had Ernie Durawa to work with, which is an amazing thing in and of itself.
Yeah, and Ernie's super cool and chill and easy to work with.
Yeah.
So tell me, was the lineup? So who all played, and was the lineup exactly the same as the album 10 years prior?
It was the original album. Russ Scanlon had played some guitar. And I don't guess he was on that second album.
No,
not intentionally. We weren't intentionally excluding him, but it's just the way it worked out. And I can't remember his name now. Wonderful piano player from San Antonio was featured on the second album, and I don't remember his name. He might have been the most exciting part of the entire album was his solo on one tune.
Yeah.
Mark something. Anyway, but both albums were incredible. Ernie, you say he's got that great vibe, and just everything was cool because Ernie was a part of it.
Yeah, well, and you guys just went in there and tracked it live. I mean, you went in there and tracked it live in a day or maybe a couple of days, and then of course there was, go back and kind of punch this and that and do some solos or whatever, right? But the bulk of it was just a live in the studio thing. Well,
we did. I think we tracked all of our solos.
Yeah,
it's just like we're all too egotistical to just take whatever happened.
Who played trumpet?
In the first,
drawing a blank on God dang it, man.
Jimmy Shortell.
Yeah. And I mean, Jimmy's ridiculous. I mean, all you guys are ridiculous. But you're the kind of guys, I think, I don't know if it was Jimmy that Rob was talking about, or it might have been a different sax player or somebody that had played with Morale even, where he was saying that one guy was literally like, oh, that's a couple of cents off. I'm a couple of cents off. Like,
oh, yeah.
Jesus, man.
Yeah. Jimmy had worked with Joe Morales on that Morale album.
Okay.
And they had done a couple of the tunes they did horn parts for. And I'll bet it was during one of those sessions where Jimmy was talking about it just being a couple of cents off.
Yeah, which is nuts.
He's got an amazing ear.
Yeah.
Yeah, classically trained trumpet player who just has a great sense for playing pop music and playing jazz and just always has something interesting to say on the horn.
So what's your background musically? I mean, trained professionally, went to school or no? Is sax your first instrument? Give us some background.
Sax first instrument, yeah. First and only instrument. Okay. Like I had said, I tried to run away from music the whole time because even though I'd had a really good experience in high school on the horn and met a couple of really good players there and had a great time, once it was time to go to college, I figured, well, I got to do something that's going to earn me some money. So I'll learn how to be an engineer. That was something my father had done. He was in petroleum engineering. I went into electrical engineering. But I took some music classes my first semester just to convince my parents that I was giving it a try. I wasn't really giving it a try. I was just marking time until I could get full on into this engineering degree. But during that first semester, taking some music classes and getting to play in the jazz ensemble, I started meeting musicians, awesome musicians, the ones affiliated with the college, with UT, and those who weren't, and started to build relationships with those people. And as opportunities came out of that, I had less and less time to focus on school, and so was fortunate enough to be able to transfer all of my credits into a business degree, finished in a business degree, which was infinitely easier, and had time to start accepting music work. Just playing with all these people that I had met through UT, through the community. There was one group in particular, the Creative Opportunities Orchestra. It was headed up by Tina Marsh, now deceased Tina Marsh, and Alex Koch, who you might know the name. He's a sax player who splits his time between Holland and the United States, or Amsterdam. And he and Tina and Tina's husband, Randy Zimmerman, who's still in the community here, they were kind of running that show, and I got to play with those guys, and they were all great players and had guests from New York and other places, great, phenomenal musicians who just really enjoyed coming and playing with Tina and Randy and Alex. And so we were able to have these wonderful shows. They'd be down at Laguna Gloria, right on the water there. We'd give her performance. Tina was wonderful at writing grants. So we got all the money for these shows through grants. Yeah, that was good. Those shows on Laguna Gloria, though, I remember we'd have lights on our music stands, and all the bugs from the lagoon would start crawling on your music stand, and you couldn't distinguish the bugs from the notes on the page.
You had some interesting jazz choices on those gigs.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of a nice.
We were making a lot of
a nice excuse, right? Every time you play a bad note, you're like, there's a bug on my stand, man. Damn it.
Oh yeah. I have an out.
Set an F sharp. I thought it was weird, but that's what I played.
Yeah.
You know what this makes me think of, Vic? Talking to Steven here, and it's been a while since we talked to him, but Jeff Lewis, the way that he was, we interviewed a trumpet player who's another just a phenomenal player, fantastic player, and you guys actually share a recording of mine that you played sax on and he played trumpet and trombone on, this Mr. Peanut. I don't know if you remember playing on that too. Oh yeah. Yeah, so we had him on a while back on the podcast, and he had a kind of a similar story where he was, I can't remember what he was going to school for now, but there was something going on, and like he had graduated or he was about to go into some sort of field.
He was pre-med or something, right?
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Oh.
Yeah.
And he was going full on that, and then all of a sudden he got an opportunity or an offer to tour with the Jacksons, and you're like, well, I guess I'll do this music thing, So then for the next 10 years or whatever, he was touring with big acts, and then he opened up a studio out in Los Angeles, and it's just been a professional musician for 40 whatever years. But it's kind of interesting. I didn't realize with you, I mean, I know you're playing all the time and you got all this stuff, but for some reason I thought we had, you mentioned a day job or something before. So, but music is what.
Yeah. So,
okay.
Well, what happened was I was finishing college in Austin. This was 86, 87, 88, in that business school now instead of engineering school. And, started playing a lot, started meeting a lot of people. I met this guy, James Lakey. He was a trombone player. I met him through UT and through that Creative Opportunities group. And got to know him and Chris Marsh, who was Eric Johnson's bass player. He was going to UT at the time. Met him, started hanging out with those guys. We got a group together. It was called Up Against the Wall. And it was like hard bop being played by these young 20-something-year-olds. We had no idea what we were doing, but we wanted to play this music. Yeah. So I think we played every venue in town one time. We're never invited back anywhere. We were just too awful. But we were super lucky because there's a great story out of that too. Brannen Temple, y'all might know his name.
Of course.
Yeah, sure. So Brannen Temple was still in high school, was finishing up high school. Chris Marsh, James Lakey, trombone player, and I were getting this group together. We needed a drummer. Didn't know who to go for. I think we were floundering around for a little while looking for a drummer. And then Chris came to us and said, you got to come to Reagan High School. Come this afternoon. Come to Reagan High School. You got to check this out. So we show up, and there's that band director there with this little kid behind the drum kit playing along to Earth, Wind, and Fire tracks and playing the shit out of the drums. Just this unassuming, I guess he was a senior in high school by that time. And we're saying, hey, you want to play with us? And he was into it. And anybody that heard him play with us after that was more interested in him than in us.
Yeah. Man, well, that's amazing. I mean, you were playing with these guys. Didn't he play with Eric Johnson too? Or not?
No, I didn't. It's just that's who Chris is with now.
But Brannen, who did he play with?
Oh, Brannen's played with a lot of people.
For some reason, I thought he played with Eric Johnson at some point. But I know he's played all
Perhaps.
over town and with a ton of people. Everybody knows the name for sure.
Yeah.
But wow.
I think he even spent a brief, well, he spent a brief period with Janet Jackson.
Really?
He had started a tour with her.
Okay. Wow.
I don't know what happened with that, but he didn't complete that. Yeah, he was amazing. And then several years later, he asked Glenn Rexach, a guitar player here in Austin, and Yogi, bass player, and I, to do a project with him. He called it Atomic Soul.
Okay.
We started playing the Elephant Room and a couple other venues, I think. And boy, they were all way better than me. I had really not learned anything yet. See, I was just kind of an intuitive player until the mid-90s, and then I figured out kind of what I was doing and took it a little further.
Well, I mean, it's so awesome, though, what you get thrown in a situation like that, and you're going to get better. You're going to get exponentially better fast, because you have to, because everyone around you is amazing, you know?
Well, Brannen taught me about pocket. I mean, he had to actually take me aside when we were in the recording studio and kind of straighten me out, because the pocket was not there. I was still learning. And he was able to guide me through it, and, you know, I was able to hang on for dear life. But that was about it. Yeah, the thing that forced me into really learning how to play the horn was that because I knew Brannen and because I knew Chris Marsh, they invited me in to play with Mitch Watkins. Mitch Watkins had been doing a lot of fusion type stuff and had a great demo of all that material. He had not recorded any of it, you know, for the public yet, but it was all in demo form. And I had gotten a copy of that demo from Chris, learned all the tunes, knew all the tunes. So Chris and Brannen approached Mitch and said, try this guy out. And I got in the band, and Mitch years later told me that he just thought I had a really outside approach, a real outside concept. The truth is I didn't know what I was doing. So I was just floundering around. And it's at that point that I went home and started figuring out this stuff. You know, here's what I'm doing. I need to learn it in 12 keys. I need to see how it applies to a set of chord changes like that.
What did you say you started playing sax? How old were you?
No, I was 11 years old. Because the band program, you know, I guess I was in 6th grade. I was just about to turn 11. And you either choose sports or you choose orchestra or band. And I had been listening to my father's big band recordings from the 30s and 40s and loved that music and had it in my head and would hum it to myself all the time. And so I was reproducing this music in my head and just through humming. And then when the opportunity came up to maybe play a horn, I thought, I'd love to try to do some of this stuff on a horn. And it was either going to be trumpet or saxophone. And I was just about to get into braces. So the choice was made for me. You can't play trumpet with a set of braces on your teeth. It's just not happening. But started learning how to play along with my albums. You know, everybody else is in the band program and they're just learning the assignments that are given. But I had an agenda. You know, I was trying to figure out how this Louis Armstrong solo went and how this Bix Beiderbecke solo went and stuff like that. And was listening to Spyro Gyra, who were kind of just out at that time.
So yeah, I mean, so you were in the band and learning the standard, you know, band repertoire and like, you know, reading music and that kind of stuff, obviously. But you were already kind of into the jazz realm and really looking into these guys and heavy into that stuff. Okay. And
yeah, I was always better as an improviser than a reader.
Gotcha. Right.
Because I learned so much just through my ears initially. And so I'm not really a very good sight reader at all. I try to interpret what's on the page and adjust it to what I'm hearing. So like if you're reading an inner saxophone part, you know, you hear a saxophone section of 5 saxes. Well, the lead alto is playing a melody, but everybody else is playing some wacky line. And I can't read those wacky lines because they don't make sense to me. And so I would start to interpret them and change them to to fit something that I heard. So I didn't get called for a lot of reading gigs. Let's put it that way.
Now, when you say now you play all these different saxophones, and how different is that? Like alto, soprano, tenor, bass sax, baritone.
It's just different here. You know, everything with the hands is the same.
Are they just different octaves, but everything is exactly the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not exactly the same. Half of the horns are keyed in B flat, and half of them are keyed in E flat. So whereas guitars and keyboards, they're all in C. They're all concert pitches, and some of these horns, they're keyed differently. And I'm not even sure where all that started, but they just sit in different places, which is good for the saxophones because I can put 3 fingers down and that's a G, whatever saxophone I'm on. Okay. But that G on a tenor saxophone is going to be an F concert, and that G on an alto saxophone is going to be a B flat concert. So
a B
you're in different places.
So which saxophone is it actually just standard like concert pitch, or is there one?
Well, they make long ago they made these C melody saxophones, and those went out of style, I think, in maybe the 1930s, 1940s.
So you're never
People
playing
stopped using them after that.
Right. When you're playing.
Right.
So if you're playing a B flat sax, to this day, we talked about Jeff with this and everything. I never get it right. So when you're playing a B flat sax, are you reading a B flat, but that's actually a C?
Yes, I would play a C. I would have to play a whole step up because my instrument is keyed down.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But then you said there's the B flat sax, but then there's an E flat sax. So you're
so an alto saxophone and a baritone saxophone are in E flat, and the soprano and the tenor are in B flat. This kind of just goes every other sax as you go up and down. They go back from B flat to E flat.
So there's bass, baritone, tenor, alto, soprano.
Yeah, and there's contrabass and there's sopranino. There's actually some freak saxophones that are above those that you listed and below.
Would that be like the thing that
they don't get a lot of use?
The thing that Kenny G plays? What is that little thing that he plays? It's like a
well, that was just a regular soprano.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, he's not a good saxophone player to follow.
Who are some of your biggest sax influences?
Oh, well, it's, that you always ask that question and it's hard to narrow it down because you go through different periods where you're digging on different people.
Yeah, sure.
I think when I was learning tenor saxophone, I was digging really hard on Branford Marsalis and Kirk Whalum. Kirk Whalum is a sax player that I don't hear many people talk about because he never got a lot of huge national fame. Although he went through a brief period of playing on some pop albums and getting a lot of exposure that way. Chaka Khan, Whitney Houston, people like that. And maybe some of the jazz people didn't take him as seriously because he was doing these pop albums. Well, it's because he sounded so great in a pop idiom. But he's got a lot of jazz chops too. And I just loved the way he phrased and the way he sounded. And so, and I was moving from alto sax to tenor sax at the time that I was loving Kirk so much and really adopted a lot of his style. Of course, it's morphed with other people that I like Mike Brecker. You hear a lot of sax people talk about Michael Brecker as being one of the 20th century gods of the horn, at least after the hard bop of the 60s. But, and today I would say my favorite sax player is Chris Potter. He started with Red Rodney playing the bebop music of Charlie Parker and was a prodigy from a very early age and is just this phenom now. He's not just a sax player. He's one of the great world musicians. He's really up there.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I feel like There's a lot of like people. I feel like, you know, if you're not a musician, like everybody knows Jimi Hendrix, everybody knows Eddie Van Halen. You know these guitar player names, right? And if you don't know any better, you say like, oh, Kurt Cobain's the best guitar player. And nothing against Kurt Cobain. I mean, it's not like a technical guitar player or Stevie Ray Vaughan. It's just like everybody knows those names. And a sax world, it's like, I feel like unless you're sort of in that crowd, you're a sax player, you're a real jazz type fan, there's a lot less names you're probably going to know. Everyone's going to say, Charlie Parker, John Coltrane, right? Marcellus. But like, yeah, so it's interesting. You're naming these gurus, and I'm going like, oh yeah, sure. Gotta go do some research.
Right. Yeah, I just nerd out on those guys, and nobody knows who I'm talking about. There is one guy that I've been nerding out on for years that everybody else is noticing now, and that's Jacob Collier.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with that name.
I feel like I know the name,
but
yeah.
Well, he started creating these YouTube videos where it's just him. It's maybe 5 or 6 of him singing this very thickly arranged jazz harmonies.
Sure.
And maybe he'd be playing bass and or drums along with his vocals, but it's always him.
Right.
He's a phenomenal bass player, phenomenal piano player.
He does it all.
Everything that he puts his hands on, he plays incredibly well. And so he finally came up with and he started getting an international following. He started rearranging covers. And one of the covers was Don't You Worry About a Thing. And Quincy Jones noticed that, heard that, and immediately went nuts over this kid. Because, he's still 16, 17 years old at the time.
Wow.
And then got Herbie Hancock's attention. And then Herbie Hancock and Quincy Jones were both just going nuts over this kid and effusively, bringing him into their fold and introducing him at festivals. And then the rest of the world started to catch on.
Wow.
He can't really play with a group. He spent so much time playing by himself that it was awkward for him to start to come into the musical community and record with people or perform with other people. He just wasn't used to it. Now some of his greatest recording successes are him featuring a different vocalist. Some of these hip hop and rap artists were on his most recent release. And so it provides a good mix. It's artists that the public can relate to, but really thick harmony and complicated song form at the same time that everybody can still appreciate.
Yeah, so definitely, very much a studio producer type musician. And the opposite of a way a lot of young guys, maybe yourself somewhat included, kind of start out playing and improvising a lot, right? And then you get into a more structured reading, production sort of environment, and it's a little intimidating, right? This guy sounded like that was his world, what he started with, right? And then getting on stage with a group of guys and just sort of flying by the seat of your pants was a new thing.
Well, and his stage shows are like a freak show because it's him running around between all these different instruments, creating loops, and just doing it all, and having some sequences, I suppose, behind him. He'd have to.
Yeah.
But it just looks more like a circus than a music concert.
Wow, man! I know that name, and I'm sure it's one of those things. Like there's these prodigies and these different people that get this huge YouTube type success, and someone will send you a link, and you're like, "Wow, cool," but you don't remember, right? Unless you see it over. And I feel like that's the kind of guy definitely been shown, and it's the guy that's just playing like everything. Vic, are you looking? I'm afraid to touch anything after what happened on our last podcast where I went dark.
No, I wrote the names down, though. Okay. I wrote the names down.
Yeah.
Well, that same guy, Mike Barnes, that I mentioned with Extreme Heat, he was the one that turned me on to Jacob Collier.
Okay.
And nobody had heard about him yet. He said, you gotta check this guy out. And so I did. Anyway.
How long ago was that?
Well, that's several years now.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 years.
So who?
My whole sense of time has changed since COVID.
Oh man,
I can't
I know,
distinguish.
Right? Because the whole year just kind of went by, and it's like I mean, we all did stuff, but it doesn't feel like it almost. It's just weird. It's definitely feels like it's. You think of things that happened a few months ago, and you're like, oh yeah, it feels like something that happened in 2019, right? And it's like, oh no, it's been like almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, who are you so I say this loosely. Who are you playing with now, or who were you playing with before we entered a fucking
well,
once a century pandemic?
Yeah, so I had mentioned Extreme Heat a minute ago. Those guys have been around Austin forever. They were Steam Heat originally, and then it became Extreme Heat. There's a lot of story and history behind that. And I came in on the tail end and have been able to ride their coattails on their performances here over the last several years. We had a monthly gig at the 1-to-1.
Okay, sure, yeah.
And boy, so many people love that venue. It's just such a wonderful venue to play. And was playing with Extreme Heat, playing with Ernie Durawa and several different groups. Joe Morales headed up Saxtravaganza, which was 4 sax players who got together in front of rhythm section there at El Mercado for a while.
Awesome, man. Yeah.
And the Vatos, and there were a couple of Western swing gigs that I was playing, a couple of Western swing bands. And Curtis Calderon is a wonderful trumpet player in San Antonio. I was playing with his group at Jazz Texas once a month. Just kind of had finally honed it into a few things where I was just improvising on these gigs.
And these were like
had just recently.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, well, I had played with a cover band for over 10 years, and that occupied a lot of Saturdays, and so I kind of got out of the loop of playing in some of these jazz groups or some of these groups where you have more of an opportunity to improvise.
Right.
And then the period with the cover band ended. I had an opportunity to take all these other gigs all of a sudden, and have been really happy since then. Even though the money is not as good, it's much more musically rewarding.
Sure. Yeah, it's a little more challenging. You get to mix it up a bit. You're not just like playing the same stock thing year after year, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the best part about that was that the crowds are always digging it. You know, the crowd hearing the cover band music, boy, they're into it, and they're dancing and singing along, and there's a lot of energy that you get out of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, after a certain number of times, it's tough to keep going.
So now, speaking of some of these places, I mean, obviously, so 1-to-1, it's great to know that they, where I think management changed or ownership changed, but they're still going to be open. And from what I hear, Greg's still going to be involved. And everyone I've talked to, myself included, everybody loves that place. Great place. And with a history. And so thank goodness for that. What about El Mercado and the backstage there? Is that doing okay? Do you know?
I think they're trying to get that started again.
Okay.
I think coincidentally, because I was talking to Ernie recently, and I think he was talking about having had a conversation or two with the owner, and that they'd like to start up again.
Yeah, man, I hope that's great. I hope so. That's a cool place, man. When they added that whole, I remember when I first started hearing that, because I always used to go to El Mercado, for years, and they had a little stage in one of the rooms, like the back dining room, actually. With little guys just play acoustic, and then someone started talking about shows, and I'm like, "What? Seriously?" And then they built that whole big, room and patio that whole big thing, and I've been there a few times and seen a few groups, but I did one of the Ernie's nights and played with him and Will and Chris, and that was a blast, man. That place is super fun. I think the Vatos. Did you guys do the album release show there even, or?
Probably, yeah. I think we did. Ernie had become a fixture there. He was doing every Tuesday night. Always had different artists in. Would bring in superstar guitar players who could just keep the audience in their palm of their hand all night. And he had developed a real following on that.
Yeah, man. And you get to eat Mexican food and drink, margaritas. Like, that's the best. Like, that place rules.
I love that front room, that bar in front, great. All that tile.
That's great, man. Yeah, I love El Mercado. It's a cool place. I'm glad to hear that, and I hope, because I mean, it's like a lot of these places. Like, it's been over a year, and you're just like, is that even still there? You know what I mean? Like, did they make it? Are things okay? So. It's great to
hear. Hey, do you remember Jovita's across the street?
Yeah, but I heard that shut down because of some crazy cocaine shit or something.
Yeah.
Story on that?
My funny story about that is that I was scheduled to play there, and maybe a month away. It was still a month away, and then the news came out about those two guys, and then their pictures are plastered in the newspaper, and the place shut down immediately. I think they had a chain link fence around the whole property within a week. But somebody, I guess one of that band sent out an email, or no, somebody from the band asked in an email after all this news had come out, does that mean our gig is canceled?
Yeah.
So he was a wishful thinker. Yeah.
Well, there was a whole Vic. This came up on a prior podcast, I think, and we were talking because I had forgotten all about it. And who do we see there? Was it Red Volkart or something? Once was that you?
I think it was.
Yeah, I think we saw Red Volkart there, and I never even knew. And then I feel like we were talking about it on the podcast or something, and it was like, oh, that place got busted for. Remember that for a while there was a whole big thing, and I don't know if this was related or not, but Momo's. Right, which was kind of a place that was always around, and that got. Remember, there was a whole big drug thing, and several bars got shut down years back. Right?
Yeah. Momo's. That was Rio Grande and West Sixth.
Yeah.
Was that the one on top of Cats?
Yeah, it was on top of Cats.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And it had been something else before then, but several gigs there too. Man, yeah, I've been gigging in this town forever, but I've always been on the periphery, because I had a day job at the same time. I was kind of a part-time musician, part-time day gigger, so never fully into either one.
Let's see, you back to the 90s, so you probably played some of those places that were gone well before I got to Austin, which was it called Steamboat and Liberty Lunch or something like that? Obviously, Anthony's, I'm sure,
Liberty Lunch. There was this guy, Dan Del Santos, world musician, had incorporated a lot of African grooves into his music, had amazing musicians. I was, that was early on, so I wasn't really ready to play in the band, but I had the right connections. So we got to play at Liberty Lunch. That was, I think, before they had the audience was originally not covered. It was like the stage was covered and the audience was out in the open. And then eventually they got a cover for the audience, and that was a big improvement.
Where was that place? Because I never saw that. I've just heard about it.
Like 2nd Street and Guadalupe.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Okay. Vic?
Or close to it. Was La Zona Rosa here when you got to town?
Zona Rosa was here, so that's what I was kind of thinking.
It was in that neighborhood.
Yeah. And I forget that's been gone for a while now, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember seeing a few different shows at that. That was a cool place.
Mm-hmm.
Was that partly outside, too? I don't remember. Or maybe there was a patio and then the whole inside area.
There was a patio, but that was just for, I guess, the smokers.
Yeah.
Because the venue was inside. Or the stage was inside.
Right.
Oh, we could spend all night talking about the way Austin used to be.
The way Austin used to be. Well, there's a documentary now. I just talked to this guy. I've heard a few people talk about it, see him popping up on Facebook about they're making a documentary about the back room. Have you heard about that?
Oh, no.
Yeah, so that should
fantastic.
Yeah, I think we're gonna get him on the podcast at some point. And but that was my introduction. Was like when I started playing around 2000. I started playing here in Austin in 2000, late 05, and then when I really started playing a little more prominent venues was like 2006 and like back. So I played a lot of backroom shows the last year they were there. But I kind of missed that. I think there was this nostalgia that had just kind of died away, maybe in the late 90s, early 2000s. Some of the venues we were talking, because was it Steamboat? Was that another one, right?
That was early on. That was one of the 6th Street. 6th Street was like the only area in town that was that was the entertainment district.
Right.
That was all there was. And Steamboat, was one of 4, 5, 6 venues. Toulouse was another one. And I would hang out down there just because I was friends with Chris Marsh. Again, this was the late 80s. And he was playing with a funk band called The Business. Okay. And headed up by Derek Edmondson, who is now a very successful sax player out in the LA area. But I just wanted to hear that band. It was so funky, and the musicians were so good. Derek would always have just the most stellar rhythm section with him. And I just wanted to hear that group. And then you got to hang out with the other bands because you're hanging out on the street, your breaks. It's all the same bands every week. It's all the people that complain now that they don't have any work. Right. They were all working, 6, 7 nights a week.
That was the heyday, though, man. And it's kind of like there's still some of that, and now there's like kind of a big, a different scene. It's not the blues type thing, or there's a lot going on at East 6, right? There's a lot going on over there.
Yeah.
There's scattered venues here and there, obviously. And there's but in terms of that original 6th Street area, now it seems very much like. You've got Friends, you've got a few places. I remember there used to be Nuno's, that's gone. Bates Motel, 311, I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. But all those kind of places where you would hear those kind of blues bands, mostly gone, except for Friends that I can think of, right? And now it's just like, I don't know what it is, dance clubs and college bars and loitering. It's just a horrible place to be, basically.
Yeah. We just lost Paul Oscher. I don't know if you saw that on the social media.
Yeah.
He was playing with Muddy Waters for a long time.
Man.
Was harmonica player for Muddy Waters. And we had him here in Austin. He was playing a lot of gigs at Antone's.
Yeah.
And touring a little bit. He started to get much older. And I guess it was COVID. I'm pretty sure it was COVID.
I feel like I heard that. You're right. Yeah. Man.
But I got to play with him. Boy, that was amazing. It was amazing getting to play with that guy because he always had wonderful rhythm section players. And it was, I'm not sure why he had me in there. He was just interested in having a horn section for a while because Tommy Robinson is his sax player.
Okay.
And he brought me and Tommy in on several gigs. And then Paul Klemper joined us a couple of times too. He just... Paul Oscher was just into having that big horn section on the stage.
I love that so much, man. I love that. There's all these different sort of genres of, there's the blues, right, which is this sort of foundation for so many things. It's a very kind of generic term, but an important term. And everyone needs to know the blues in terms of the formula and the importance of it in that aspect. But there's all these, the Delta blues and the Texas blues and the New Orleans, but Chicago blues is what I just love that Blues Brothers horn section, man, like that, and that R&B and that soul and that Motown type music is just like, it doesn't seem like a lot of times the horns aren't doing much, right? But what they're doing is so integral and so important. Just those little stabs and those little moments. It just makes a song, it just makes it.
Yeah. And that's where it becomes important that the horn players all phrase together. And not all the horn sections phrase real well together. And that's always a drag because if you can just sound like one unit, it's so much more intense, so much more dramatic.
And when you say that, do you mean just the kind of the vibe and the pocket that everyone has together, or what do you mean exactly?
Well, the length of notes,
sure. Okay.
Whether you attack a note or slur into that note, how short or long it is, all that kind of stuff. Where it sits in the pocket too, but to a large degree, it's just the articulation.
I would think that a part of that, regardless of how good the horn player would be. I mean, obviously, when you're more familiar with certain genres and the way that the music is approached, you're going to be a little more adept for that than, maybe a bebop horn player who comes into a Motown band or whatever, right? But I would think that anything like that, though, if you're a section and you rehearse a bunch, or the more you play together, you're gonna get that vibe of like whatever the band leader wants, how everybody works together, what feels right, But that's the kind of thing. You're right. It's like, because you could make a chart, and even if it's a chart that was pretty specific, and you get a group of horn players and no one's ever played together on stage, and it's like, look, here it is, just read it. but that's those nuances that you're talking about. That's those minor little things that make it. And it's so interesting, right? Because I feel like those are the intangibles, or like it's not maybe a big deal, but it is a big deal, right? Maybe subconsciously, like that is affecting a listener. It's just the tightness, the precision.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people hear all of that stuff and maybe just can't discuss it, but they're hearing it and they know whether it's legit or not.
Yeah.
There's a guy, I guess he's San Antonio based, Carlos Sosa. He heads up the Groove Line horns, and they played with some pretty heavy acts. I mean, like A-list acts. And he's got that kind of thing going on. They're very disciplined about phrasing and sounding like a unit. It's very exciting.
Do you, and usually you're in a project with someone that's kind of, you've been in somewhere it's more of a band and a kind of an open to everybody, and some that's just a very specific band leader type situation, right? Do you prefer one way or another with that?
You mean where you have members that rotate in and out?
More of like you have kind of like a group of people playing together that are sort of like making the decisions together and allowed the freedom to kind of express their individuality, as opposed to like if you're playing in a project like that where there's a band leader like a James Brown that's like wants it very particular, right?
Yeah, the more free situations are always more rewarding, because usually you have a group of guys that can do that and still make it sound like music. It's not going to crater. It's not going to fall apart. I mentioned earlier these driveway shows. Yeah. We've done 14 of them now. Just on the driveway, advertise on social media, mainly next door, which turned out to be a great thing to do. And people come out, hang out in the street, sit in the yards across from us. And for several of those shows, I've had this piano player named Morris Nelms, a couple other rhythm section players to join us. And we all just know how to read chord changes and make a tune sound like a tune, even when, all you've got is the chord sheet. And plus Morris is turning into a wonderful singer and a wonderful band leader, and he can just kind of make decisions about the arrangement as we go. And since he's the piano player, it's real easy to just follow him. Because everybody's listening real hard.
And these are like standards? These are pre-written tunes or not original stuff? That's right.
Standards. Yeah, not original. Standards that, the Great American Songbook you may have heard referred to, which is a lot of the standards come from that period. And then more recent stuff too, but stuff that becomes part of the jazz vocabulary. Tunes that theoretically any jazz players can get together and make something happen. They're all going to know the tunes.
As a horn player, I feel like you always have a leg up, unless you're a jazz guy. I'm more kind of the rock background. I love jazz. I listen to a lot of jazz music and XM jazz. That's all I really listen to. If I'm in the car, of course, I haven't been in the car much this last year, but but there's the whole real book and this whole big, hundreds of tunes, right? And some guys just know these frickin' tunes. And like you said, and can play them in every key. It's crazy, right? I mean, I've played a couple of them, but what are some of your favorites or some of those absolute standards that everybody knows and everybody loves? And do you have any particular ones that are your favorites?
Well, I always love this go-to Sonny Rollins tune called Doxy.
Okay.
And not a lot of people have heard it necessarily, but there's not a lot to it harmonically, and yet it's a framework that you can get really experimental within and just go to town. It's like a blues in that it's not too complicated, but it's just catchy. And I don't hear a lot of people call it, so I love to call it too.
And that's so it's a simple tune that you can kind of get on pretty quick because there's not a lot of key changes and stuff like that. Is it just in a kind of a blues structure, like Blue Monk's a good example of that, right? Like just kind of a blues tune, basically, right? I mean, it's real simple, real straightforward.
Yeah, it's very straightforward, and you don't even necessarily have to know the melody to make something happen with it. Somebody else can play the melody for you.
Yeah, that's the thing about now when you're playing like as a jazz guy, right? So the key is a little bit of jazz stuff that I've kind of done piano wise is like you start learning. I started learning like some basic tunes like everybody knows, like Autumn Leaves or Blue Bossa or whatever, and actually went and started learning them in different keys. And but improvising is, especially piano, is so difficult trying to actually keep a moving bass line and not just or even comping chords while soloing, because I can kind of go one or the other, but man, doing them together, that's a lot, And
oh yeah. I have so much respect for piano players.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well,
and to make it fun,
I have like,
because then you get, and it doesn't matter what instrument I'm playing on, like, because I think what happens at first is like, because then you're processing chord by chord, and so you're kind of playing over each chord. But then someone who's an advanced, sort of jazzer is going to be like, that's shit. you want lines that like flow, right? You want to create these lines. So when you're improvising on something like that, are you kind of seeing? It seems to me like a lot of guys see like this snapshot of like 2-5-1s, right? And you just sort of play lines over this, and then if there's another 2-5-1 key, you're kind of playing a line on that. Is that a general approach? I mean, I know it's a super generic question, but
it is. You get these cliches under your belt. You've worked out all these patterns or these cliches, and they have a starting place. Like, I know that this cliche starts on the dominant seventh of the dominant seventh chord, starting on that note. Or I have a pattern that starts on the third. And then I take off. I think about the fact that, I need to start here because I'm in this set of chord changes, but then I kind of just let go, and hopefully my muscle memory will take over. Muscle memory combined with just how creative can we get? Where can we go within this harmonic framework?
Yeah, because once you have that comfort level, I think a lot of it too is just knowing, especially the more complex the tune gets. Because if you know that's the thing about bebop, or things that are moving by real fast and there's a lot of changes, it's so easy to just, like if you're in a blues framework or Autumn Leaves, it's like it doesn't take too long to be like comfortable within the framework, and you're not going to get lost, right?
The keys aren't changing so
when
rapidly.
you get in one of those more complex tunes like that, for me, I'm going like, oh my God, like it's as long as you can know where the hell you are somewhere, then you can know where to put your period, right? It's you don't know where the hell you are, you're screwed. Unless you just have a great ear, and you can just go fly right in there, which some people can.
And that's why I love to learn tunes, by maybe just outlining the chord changes, just like playing 1-3-5-7 or 7-5-3-1 over every change, and learning a tune like that. Actually, Mike Stern, the guitar player Mike Stern, gave a master class at UT when I was there, and he suggested that. He said, don't make it too complicated. Do something that's reasonable and that will kind of teach you the skeleton or the framework of the tune. Doing something like that would.
Absolutely, the starting point, right.
And then, of course, he gets real cerebral and starts to, then do the 5-3-7-1. And all this other stuff, and by that time, I'm ready to just kind of leave it to the universe.
You mean
just whatever
he's just
muscle,
basically going like, how many different ways can I
inversions?
Play this? I see, right? Okay.
Yeah, and being able to say in your head ahead of time, I'm playing this inversion on this chord. Wow, that gives you a lot of dexterity that somebody else might not have. I rely on my intuition so much just because I spent so long learning by ear that it was hard actually to go back and try to dissect it and say, oh, okay, this thing that I've always played, this is why it works, and I can transpose it now and learn it in these other keys.
Right.
And it's going to be meaningful to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and from playing by ear, so I think a lot of guys, you can play by ear can kind of be a misnomer, because I feel like most people have some idea of like, well, I'm playing a C and the fifth of C is a G. You at least have some idea what the hell's going on, right? But I think a lot of guys, when you're doing that, you're playing, you know your intervals very well, and you're playing by ear, and maybe you're thinking about them, or maybe it's just intuitive, right? And so you know when you're playing a dominant seventh, and you know when whether you're really thinking about it or not, right? So especially on an instrument like that, that's a strictly melodic instrument, right? Not like piano or guitar where you can have these create chord clusters. It's all one note at a time, right? For sax.
Yeah.
I mean, right?
I had a guitar player get on me for that once. He said, "Man, you got it so easy. You just got one note at a time."
Yeah, but I mean,
and he was right.
You know, you could look at that the opposite way and be like, and if you looked at it in a different way, I would say that it actually forces you to think a little harder, or you know what I mean? Because you have to go, I can't create that simultaneously. I have to look at how I can create this, you know, melodically. So every phrase, everything has to be done in a melodic fashion, right? But I think that's where I was kind of going, was like, so I would imagine, like, you naturally developed a really good ear in terms of where your pitch was and what you were trying to express that way, right? And then just taking that back to a place where you're like, well, let me analyze this and think about what each of these notes are and how they react to these chords, or why is every single thing I'm doing right here making sense at this point in the tune, right? Is almost reverse engineering what you were doing, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And to a large extent, I didn't like doing it because all of a sudden it wasn't fun. There was, you know, everything up to that point had been fun. I was just doing what I wanted to do and learning what I wanted to learn because I didn't have these demands on me. I wasn't getting hired by a bunch of groups at that point who said, okay, you learn these tunes and this material. I was free to just enjoy the albums that I was digging on and maybe try to emulate those or not play for a while or, you know, just do whatever. And then all of a sudden when you turn it into homework, it can be a little daunting, a little tedious, a little tiresome. But, you know, the reward off of doing that is so great. You just remind yourself, gosh, if I can just notate this out and work it out, God, everything's going to get more wonderful.
Well,
also now and it does every time.
Now you can be more snobby as well and say things like nice Euclidean. I really like that flat too.
Well, I never could talk about it much. I hear these guys talk about all this theory stuff, and it's like, I don't know where they're going with that. I just don't know.
Interesting.
But I can play you a cool lick in D7 if you want.
I think the interesting thing about theory is, I think theory is awesome. I love it. But like when I first started learning, it's like I learned a bunch of patterns and that these are the modes. Well, okay, I'm learning patterns on a guitar that if I start here and I play this, sure, I'm playing that mode. But it's only, there's got to be a context. What chord am I playing behind? That determines what it is, right? And so it kind of took me a while later. I mean, it was good for me developing the mechanics and technique in learning the fretboard to a certain degree. But what you realize later, and I think, is like at the end, it meets in the middle, right? The ears and the theory, because it's like if you don't know how to express that over a set of chord changes or on a stagnant chord even, and what those tones mean, what that modal sound means. If you can't express that musically and know what you're trying to say with it musically, who cares if you know a bunch of fucking jargon, like, you know, and a bunch of patterns?
Yeah.
It doesn't really, I don't think it really comes into real life, use until you're actually putting it to a tune and you're playing it against a harmonic backdrop to a certain degree, right?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of the people that came out of North Texas were like that. They were just, North Texas became this jazz musician machine, and they could churn out all these people who could play anything, over any set of changes and just make something happen. But a lot of them, it was so mechanical sounding that it wasn't anything I wanted to listen to.
Yeah, same thing with guitar. I mean, I used to kind of, and I've accepted it, and I'm okay with it nowadays. And I know my technical limitations, and it can be a bit frustrating in certain situations. I can't go play, crazy prog metal or hard jazz. But I mean, that's almost, that bebop is a whole nother level. There's so many facets to these different genres, right? Like, but the overall understanding of music and the language of music, and I know, like, you learn to, I think, become comfortable with how you play and what your influence have created. And I kind of like with you, like, I really enjoy the knowledge that I have and being able to use that, especially when you're writing and you're thinking and you're problem solving or whatever the case may be. But I also love the idea of just like being able to throw things away and not overthink and just create things and not, like you said, not where everything is so mechanical and rigid, where you're just following a set of drills and that you've done a billion times, and just let the music be free. I think a lot of my favorite things that I've ever created is just improv, that I go back and go, wow, what did I play? And then I go track that solo on something, you know, and because it's just happens in the moment. I think there's something, I was always that way too, more of kind of an improviser, right? And from a piano standpoint, more in a classical, pretty straightforward 1-4-5, you know, class triadic type stuff. And then, you know, guitar, same way. I've got a little bit of fusion touch, but like, yeah, man. I always just played like you said. You know, I learned the basics of a tune and just play, and improvise like crazy. And it's funny because a lot of people, you get these different schools of thought. There's definitely the classical. You mentioned the jazz guys, but I always talk about the classical piano. That they learn to read and they can read a Beethoven piece like nobody's business. But then you're like, hey, let's jam, and they're just like, you know, like no idea, like deer in headlights, and people get really afraid. I've had to kind of learn how to teach, how to approach even starting to improvise, because not everybody has that like, oh, I'm just going to like play some notes and this feels good and this is exciting. A lot of people are very like, I don't know what to do. This is, you know, scary.
So yeah, you teach piano and guitar, right? Are you teaching a lot of improvisation?
It usually kind of eventually, I mean, it kind of jumps all over, you know, student by student and wherever, but I almost always, you know, speaking of the blues, obviously, it almost always starts with sort of, you know, we'll learn the major scale, and, you know, we'll talk about relative, this and that, and the pentatonic, and then sort of the pentatonic patterns as they're laid out on the guitar. And basically, you know, then the idea of just like, here's your chord. I've even started going, you know, Ulrich Ellison, right? You know that dude, guitarist. He's got he started a workshop in this whole big thing that he invited me to as kind of a guinea pig, and where he first started it. So I went to several of his online things that he's been doing, and he does a lot of examples where he just plays over a drone, and I'm like, what a great idea, just a stagnant drone, keep it super simple. And so just having people play that and sort of hear how, look, all these tones sound cool, but this one's particular, you know, this is the tonic and this is the third, kind of going with that, and then trying to get him, like you said, then you start to stockpile kind of a combination of knowing where your intent is, your periods are, like, and your landing points, right? Your chord tones, but then also building that sort of stockpile of licks and runs or whatever, right? So when you're playing, it's kind of a combination of you're creating some melody in your head on the fly, learning to repeat. That's a big thing, I think, is learning to create like motifs and repeat. Because what I see a lot of times, people, they learn a pattern, they just go, and it's like, no, stop. Like, do something and then do it again in the exact same rhythmic parameters, right? And create something memorable and then spin off of that a little bit. Like a blues call and response.
Yeah.
Right? Learning those.
Yeah, the kind of thing that once you hear that solo several times, it's still interesting.
Exactly. And so
it's because you figured out what that soloist is.
I feel like that's what I've been doing more and more, because literally I used to just go like, okay, cool. Like, now you know here pentatonic, now jam. And people are like, what? So it's like, okay, so we got to like learn, what does that mean? And so kind of building up to that. And then I see how people get comfortable with that when they start to kind of go, oh yeah, these notes do sound good. But that's a big thing I've been talking about a lot lately, is just that idea of like, create something that you can create again. You know, don't drift so far away you forgot where you even started. Do something and then do it again, and then come over here and then come back here and then do that again, but in an octave. And then so you keep building on a center idea, because that's what everything does anyway, right? Music is all about a melody, whether it's a jazz tune with the head and then you can go into outer space and then come back home, or a symphony where you've got a super simple melody and a 40-piece orchestra doing all these elaborations and modulations and all this, but you're still, right, so many times it's just a simple little melody is at the core of all this music. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And being able to record yourself and review and figure out what you're doing wrong and what you're doing right, you get a lot of that.
That's what I've been trying to do a lot more lately, especially with the pandemic. And everyone's kind of going like, you can't sit in a classroom. And so it's been like everyone's kind of been, getting GarageBand or getting some, Audacity, right? Like these programs that'll either come with the Mac or you can get for free, and learning the very basic fundamentals of how do you record yourself. Back once upon a time, it was cassette tapes, right, and 4-track cassette recorders.
Right. Oh gosh.
But now it's it's all digital. Everybody has a computer, so learning how to do that. You're right, because you'll never, just like me with this podcast. I had no idea how horrible my voice was until I started talking on this podcast. You got to hear yourself, and then you go, oh wow, I'm really not. That's messy. I hear all the mistakes, or I'm not really coming back and playing.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I think that's the sooner someone can play with a group. They're such different things, right? So playing in a group context, that's something I like to do also, is like sort of playing in a band context, playing drums, which is fun for me, but being the glue so people get a feel for playing together. But then now, especially in this pandemic, it's been a lot of sort of like teaching how to record yourself and that mindset. And I think once a musician understands that those two different dynamics, like you're in a pretty good place. Like you understand how to there's such different situations. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Again, I mentioned these driveway shows. Every one of those got recorded. And so I was able to review the shows the very next day after every one. And I feel like I improved more in this last year just from having done that on a consistent basis than maybe the previous 3 years.
I used to record. When my band played. I used to always take a video camera and try to record as many shows as I could, just for that purpose. To watch yourself.
Yeah, and if you got the time to go back and review it, you can get so much out of it.
So tell us.
It's like, oh my God, I'll never do that again.
The funny things too. Like, I know, like I remember one time I played just physical mannerisms and stuff. Of course, I do all kinds of ridiculous things on stage. But I remember one time I played something and I was chewing gum. I've never chewed gum at a show since then, because I looked, in my mind, I thought I just looked like a douche. Like, hey everybody, I'm so cool, chewing gum, and I was just like, oh, that looks horrible. I don't ever want to do that. So it's like whether it's how you look and presenting, or of course what you're actually playing. But speaking of the driveway shows and recording those, is that something that people can go watch? Is that available somewhere online or no?
I've got a show coming up on May 1st and one on May 15th. And it's just right out there in the street. I'm on Market Garden, real close to Brisbane.
Where the hell is that?
South Austin. If you know where William Cannon and Westgate are. It's a little south of there.
Oh, man, May 15th. Yeah. I'm going to put this in my calendar right now. So
May 1st and May 15th. They're both Saturdays, and they're both 6 p.m. to 7:30.
This is awesome. I'm pretty sure, and Vic is relatively south too, or very south actually. Vic used to be one of those weirdo Northerners, but now he got with the program and.
That's right.
Oh, thank God. There's something about North Austin.
I don't want to go there.
It's just.
I meet someone that lives in Georgetown. I was like, so nice meeting you. I'll never see you again. But yet every band I met, everyone lives all over the fucking place. Like one guy will live in Kyle and someone else lives in Lampat. Like literally, it's ridiculous. So it's like...
well, that wasn't a big deal maybe 20 years ago, but now that it's impossible to get across town in any short period of time.
I think downtown is too far north for me now.
Yeah. So. See, once you come to the south side, like you're like, oh, dude... If you have to
Vic,
cross Riverside, you're
are
like...
you south of Slaughter?
Oh, dude, he's in Kyle.
Oh, yeah. I'm in Kyle.
Oh, Kyle. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so what if I have to go somewhere and it's past 79, I'm like, oh, God, that's way up there.
See, now you know how we all felt back in the day when we were like, party at my place. You're like, oh, God, I guess I'll go play some... We had some fun, we had some fun parties back at Vic's old house, though. Guitar Hero.
Sure.
Guitar. It was like a guitar player guy that was getting all mad, like real competitive with Guitar Hero. And I'm like, dude, this is like boring. It's not even like playing guitar to me anyway. I never got, as a real guitar player, I was so bored with that game. Remember that thing?
Well, why would you, if you're going to spend the time to learn how to play that game, why don't you just learn the guitar?
Seriously, it's so ridiculous. I would have students that would spend hours and hours and hours and hours playing that fucking game, and then it's like whoop-de-woo, and I'm like, so did you learn that G chord yet? No, it's like this is a story I always tell, and thank God this is not a thing anymore. But around the time I started teaching guitar, was in 2006 when I started working at a school, I would get, these guys, and back then I just taught, several hours all day, every day, and I don't do that anymore. But it would just be like a bunch of kids. Some of them were really cool teenagers. Some of them are people that are still my friends to this day. I had some great students. But I'd get those kids. There was something about the time and what was going on with the emo rock bands of the time and the whole guitar here. I'd get these guys and they come in with the hair hanging in the face. Yeah, I just want to learn Avenged Sevenfold, man. And I'm like, okay, so did you learn the chords that we talked about since you just started 2 weeks ago? Yeah, but I want to learn a solo. And I'm like, oh, geez. I swear to God this happened, right? So there's this kid, and it's the end of the day, and I've been teaching him for 6 hours, and I'm exhausted. I'm just like, oh, my brain. And he's wants to learn this Avenged Sevenfold solo, right? So I'm figuring out this solo, and it's this arpeggio thing or whatever. I'm like, okay, I think that, writing it out. I'm like, okay, I think it's this arpeggio, and then this. And he's like, are you sure there's not another note? Because on Guitar Hero, it goes green, orange, orange. And I'm like, that happened. I'm like, dude, Guitar Hero is not guitar.
It's just embarrassing.
Yeah, it's just fortunately, that's not really a thing. That was only a couple of kids, but I was just yeah, I don't.
It was long enough for South Park to make a fun of it.
Yeah, I don't.
Oh, that's good.
If you've never seen the South Park episode where they made fun of Guitar Hero, you should find that fucker. It's
geez, I'm sure I would love it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Hey, I was just revisiting an old South Park episode the other night. It was one of my favorite. Very early on, there was a two-parter where we were going to find out who Cartman's father
Denver
was.
Broncos, right?
And, yeah. well, that was one of the possibilities that it was the Denver Broncos. Turned out it was the mother. She was a hermaphrodite, and then it's determined that they don't know who Cartman's mother is, and then it just stops there, and we never revisit the topic again. But they were supposed to show that part two and it was in the 90s, and it was going to be on April 1st, Wednesday, April 1st on Comedy Central. And so we're just about to see it, and then the screen flashes. Episode 2 will not be shown tonight, so that we can show you this special presentation of Terrence and Phillip. And it was the Not Without My Anus episode, which to this day has to be the funniest South Park episode I've ever seen about these, they're mocking these Canadian characters. And, it's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
Dude, we could easily have an entire podcast on just South Park episodes. That would not be a problem. But it's been a while now, right? Because that was probably, 2007, 2008? I'm imagining that's when Guitar Hero came out. It was real big. So I bet it was all the way back then. But, yeah, it's a good one, man. Well, the guy is there's and they do the whole thing, the rise and fall of a band. And this big record executives oh, these guys are the best Guitar Hero players. And they make this whole big band out of them. And then they have the rise to fame and then the fall. And so then he's one of them's playing them in an old bowling alley. it's so ridiculous. And then there's the one kid who's super good, and he's standing not plugged into anything, just practicing some outside somewhere, and it's click 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 click. And you're listen to him go. It's amazing. Yeah. And then the punchline at the end of the episode is just classic South Park. Brilliant. Yeah. Good stuff, man.
Brilliant. Trey and Matt. Brilliant guys.
We were talking about this fairly recently. I'm a massive Trey Parker, Matt Stone fan, and the whole, Team America. I mean, what a brilliant movie that is, dude. And the soundtrack. Did you ever see The Book of Mormon? Do you know that?
Yes, I was lucky enough to get to see it with the original cast, third row center on Broadway.
Wow! Actually,
nice.
New York. Holy cow!
The original run, amazing, just amazing. And they poke fun at every religion. Nobody was spared.
That's why I love those guys, because they play fair. They don't. It's a lot of guys. They're the comedians and this and that, and then it's I look at that as look, I understand everyone's got their political opinions and this and that, but I feel part of your responsibility to a certain degree as an entertainer, especially on a national stage, if you're a late night talk show host or something, it's you got to play fair. You're always allowed to make fun of the president. You're also, sure, but if you just pick one thing and that's all you do, and you're just come on, man. And South Park has never done that. They just Yeah, like no one is spared ever. They just destroy everybody. Same with the musical and everything else. You're right. I mean, there's just like nobody is spared. And they're like, it's amazing. I don't know how they have any money left. Their lawyers must be super busy. I'm sure so many people have tried to sue them.
Oh yeah.
But,
well, there was I think they were they had to clear this one episode with the censor, and they were going to use. I guess it was the word shit.
They did it like 50 times.
A whole bunch of times. Right. And the censor says, we're going to fine you X amount of money for each time that you say it. And so they just did the censor a favor and had a little counter at the bottom of the screen that kept increasing as they said it more and more times.
That's the American dream right there. And like, you get rich enough to just, and you know you're popular enough and there's enough of demand what you're doing that you can just be like, oh, cool, we can't do that. Well, how much do we owe you if we do? Boom, you know? It's just like, and then you're just going to keep, and I feel like they kept getting bigger and bigger and because of it, because they never held back. They never caved. Can't say that about too many people. Yeah. Anyway.
So they're the part of the fabric of our culture now, you know?
Yeah, The Simpsons and South Park, those have got to be the longest running shows on television. I mean, Simpsons is absurd. They've been around for
20.
No, dude.
Almost 30, right?
More than
like 28?
Long time.
Oh, let's see. Over 30 years. And then South Park's been around for 20 years now.
Yeah. And I'm suddenly remembering, you know, you say Simpsons, and I always think of Homer. He's about to have an affair with Michelle Pfeiffer. And, you know, she's animated as Michelle Pfeiffer. That's not her name in the show, but she has been trying to seduce him. And then somehow a plate of cookies convinces him that he needs to go ahead and pursue this affair. And so he meets her at the hotel, and they're about to get into it. And he starts crying, and she says, "Well, Homer, why are you crying?" And he says, "Well, because we're gonna have to have sex now, and it's gonna ruin my marriage or whatever." Well, why do you know that's gonna happen? Well, because the cookie told me so. And she warned him that, well, you know, cookies aren't always right. But Homer argues, yes, but they're so sweet and tasty. So.
Did you guys ever see the movie? Because I still have not seen the Simpsons movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How was it?
I mean, it wasn't really memorable, was it?
No.
I mean, I guess when you have like 1,000 episodes of your series, it's just kind of another long episode, right?
I mean, there's been so many great episodes of throughout the entire run. I mean, it must be really hard to put together an actual movie plot and just extend that for like hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah, because you depend on that certain format, and they follow that certain half-hour format for so long.
That's a good point. Well, is that where it ends? Simpsons and South Park? Remember?
We got away from the music.
No, I mean, that's fine. Dude, this has probably been one of the our best podcasts in terms of there has been, knock on wood, there has been no horrible technical issues so far. We actually talked about music for over an hour and didn't immediately ruin things like talk of porn and stuff like that. So, I mean, this has been a pretty successful episode, man.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I knew this guy in the medical field. He had this huge Playboy collection, and during Snowpocalypse, he lost the collection. A pipe burst, and the water got all over it.
See, here's the thing about that. Like, I mean, man, that's old school. This is a hilarious Adam Carolla thing I remember from like maybe that show Loveline or something way back where he was talking. He always was telling masturbation jokes and stuff, and he was hilarious. But he was saying like, yeah, but back in my grandfather's day, he had to lay in a field and wait for a cloud in the shape of a tit. It's like. But you think back now to Playboys, if you're like a 10 or 12-year-old boy or something from our generation, you're going like, ooh, Playboy. Like a Playboy now is like, really? It's like a naked women, whatever. It's like, I mean.
Well, when you don't have access to Playboy, it's just like the the Sears catalog.
Oh yeah, dude.
It's or the
nowadays, like, you can log in. I mean, I feel bad for parents that got to have all these, fucking safety or security bullshit to keep their kids.
Oh yeah,
it's because
firewalls.
Oh
and
man,
stuff.
I mean, once upon a time, like, there was nothing. You had to like go to a 7-Eleven, like, covered in shame when you were like 18 to buy a Hustler or something. And before that, you're right, it was like Victoria's Secret. Like, every guy probably got caught with a Victoria's Secret magazine under his mattress at some point. But like nowadays, I mean, it's just like there's no like A to Z. It's just like there's not a slow progression of like, oh, boobs and vagina. No, it's like double anal. You're welcome, 10-year-old. Hi, I'm the internet. You know what I mean? So there was something like kind of, there was like, I don't know, it was like more exciting back in the day to like the hunt, the hunt for porn.
That was part of it. Yeah, the hunt was part of it.
So the excitement of driving home from your first adult video store. But like, my fiance's yep, she's here. It's like, oh God, there he goes. We made it through an hour. She's looking. We made it through an hour with no porn talk. But where was I going with this? Not important at all, but I want to finish it.
Hey, I've got a good masturbation joke if I can include it. and it really goes no further than the use of the word. But guy goes to see his doctor, and the doctor tells the guy, "Sir, you're going to have to stop masturbating." And the fellow says to his doctor, "But doc, why?" And the doctor goes, "So that I can finish this examination."
Yeah, I remember they made that joke about me.
It's my one joke that I know.
Dude, I don't know. I can never remember jokes. Some people are those people that can just rattle off joke after joke. I cannot remember jokes to save my life. Vic, are you a joke guy?
We got to have a short one.
Yeah. No, I mean, I always used to tell the Invisible Man joke. That's the only joke that I knew from when I was like a kid, and I just thought it was the funniest thing.
Can you still tell it?
Man, I haven't told this joke since I was probably a fucking teenager. Like, it was like, oh, geez. That would be like my mom trying to tell a joke. She printed off the internet and just fucking it up the whole time. Oh, wait, was it? Who was it? No, like, it was like something about like, oh, man, what was it? Like, Superman's flying around and he sees Wonder Woman just like sprawled out naked, like sunbathing on this rooftop or some shit, right? So he just flies down and just real fast, right? And just went off and flies away. And Wonder Woman kind of startled and she's like, "Oh my God, what was that?" And the Invisible Man just goes, "I don't know, but my ass hurts." So that's my one joke I remembered for like 20 whatever years.
Well, you got to have one.
That's it.
You got to have at least one.
Tell me you got something better.
Mm-hmm. No, not really.
Well, but Vic has that voice, see? Vic doesn't need a joke. He's just got the voice.
No, guys like me have to try to be funny, like to try to like get girls. Vic just goes, "Hi, I'm Vic." And they're like, "Oh."
And they swarm around him. Yeah.
Vic's the guy, I've made this joke before, right? It's like the guy, like, I'll be the guy like all night long, like, and they're like, and then like Vic's like, "Hi, I'm Vic," and then they just leave with Vic because he's just, it's all about the voice. Vic has been flattered so much on this podcast about his voice. He's going to start getting an ego, masturbating to himself, masturbating to his voice. Listen to that voice.
So how about those ASMR videos? You're talking about masturbating to a voice. They have these on YouTube. You can find these ASMR videos, and I don't remember what it stands for, but it's basically people talking very quietly in a whisper, just being very calm and controlled, and that the listeners of these things, they're getting off to it somehow. They're getting something out of it.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what they're doing while they're getting something out of it, but there's a big demand for these videos.
No matter what it is, there's always going to be some pervert that makes it sexual, right? Because you've got that. It's probably designed to like be calming and, hey, we're just going to watch the stream is flowing like Bob Ross, right? And then someone's like, "Oh, this is really turning me on," like there was a thing. Like there was something about there's a thing, and I think it's I don't know what country, like Japan or it sounds some Asian country, but like I swear there's a thing. There's a whole like thing, apparently. I probably have heard about this from Italo, but like where chicks just eat, and it's like it's like a big thing, and they got like millions of followers, and like dudes just watch girls eat.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew that's what you were going to bring up, because this came up the other day. And so in the people that are making these videos in competition, in an effort to try to outdo each other, they're eating crazier and crazier stuff. And there's been at least one instance of a guy dying while he's eating something, and someone else choking, and just all that kind of stuff.
Dude, it's so.
And then of course you can search for those videos too.
I mean, here's the thing: it's like the whole kind of perverted and taboo stuff has been around forever, I'm sure, especially since print came, and then and video, and now the internet. I mean, it's impossible to get away from this. Every disgusting thing you could ever imagine is out there, But now it's like it's in the mainstream with this Gen Z stuff, right? They're like, oh, I'll do the Tide Pod challenge, I'll do the cum drink challenge, or whatever the case may be. And so you're just like, it's seriously though, like they will do anything for like, oh, I'll get more TikTok views or whatever. And you're right, dude. Like,
for more likes.
Yeah, people eating cockroaches and doing Tide Pods and killing themselves, doing dumb shit. I'm like, I don't mean to sound super insensitive, but kind of like, I mean, that's Darwinism, dude. Fuck you. Like, if you're that dumb, fuck you. You know what I mean?
Play stupid games.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Stupid games, stupid prizes. I mean, we lived in a time where we did dumb shit, and like, we rode our bikes with no helmets, and we played after dark, and thank God we're all still here. I mean, we didn't have there wasn't a mass shooting every single day when we were kids that I recall.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, man. I feel very lucky to have been a kid when there was no social media, no internet.
Yeah.
None of that. Because it's hard enough being a kid and finding your place, finding where you belong without all that other pressure. I mean, the biggest pressure I remember from school was, I think it was in 8th grade, and they did this carnation sale. And so all these chicks, they were hoping that they'd get the most carnations. So the girls would buy each other carnations just to make sure that the popular girls had a whole bunch of carnations that they could bring home. And the poor girls that maybe didn't have many friends, she maybe got 1, 2, maybe 0. And dude, why should she be put through that?
I have talked about this. So one of my best friends, Dave, who was on one of our very first podcasts, and we know each other inside out and talk about porn 99% of the time or whatever, but we know all that kind of stuff, and it's so funny because we've talked about we went to high school together and stuff, and it's so ridiculous that whole popularity click thing, right? And that's and nowadays you got cyberbullying and all this bullshit, but yeah, it's so bizarre because literally you could have the popular girl, and everyone wants to be with a popular girl. She might be like okay, but not even like the best looking girl. And then you got some other girl that's like gorgeous, but you're like, oh, she's like the poor, not popular girl. It's like, don't you wish you could just slap the fuck out of yourself and like always go back in time and just be like, oh, fuck all you guys. I'm gonna go like hook up with this hot nerd that plays the French horn.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no kidding. When I first got to college, I was still pretty naive when I first started college, and my older brother, 8 years my senior, he had me and a bunch of my little friends over at his apartment here in Austin, and he said, guys, listen, I can't impress this upon y'all enough. Have sex with anything that moves, just because this is when you're going to be able to do it. You're going to regret it if you don't. I swear. I promise you.
There's something to be said about that in a weird way. And I have a horror story I won't share. It may be one of the few things they take to my grave. But there's like, I mean, that's the thing, right? Because I think you can easily put people on pedestals in this whole big thing, right? And in some weird way, I almost agree. Like, it's almost like just get it over with. And so you're like, okay, now I can think clearly and you know what I mean? Like, it's not like I don't know. I think I had that problem for just like with that whole thing, the notion of sex and the opposite sex and being with somebody, and it's like I mean, some people, if it's a religious thing, I respect that, but I'm not so much, and I'm not saying like she'll be a whore, you know, or anything like that, but it's just like, I think like sometimes like you just overthink everything and you're so worried about what someone else thinks. Like if you literally just, I think so many times in my life, I just literally had gone up to someone and said, hi. That's all it would have taken was hi. But you're just like, oh, she's an amazing thing. It's like, no, she's just some girl, like, you know,
right.
That probably wants someone to talk to.
Yeah. Geez, man, I can remember thinking that if I had my hair just right, that would be the ticket, you know, that would get the chick, you know. And now I just shave down and have nothing.
Well, you know what? There's that irony though too that I think where it's so, isn't it weird how it's the I think it's the same with a lot of things. Like if you like people read your energy, or like if you're all showered and you're like, I'm gonna get laid tonight, you know, and then you go out there and you stand on the corner like a doofus or whatever, or you know, you don't hook. But then you're that night when you're like, I don't give a fuck everything, and you don't shower and you smell like balls, and then all of a sudden you meet some gorgeous chick because there's this like thing that she's just like, this dude doesn't give a fuck, and that's cool. You know what I mean? I think there's that like that quiet confidence or that indifference that can be an attractive thing.
Yes.
Very true.
It's like indifference. It's indifference, and the girls can sense it. Yeah, very attractive quality.
Yeah, especially girls.
But you should still shower.
You should still shower, but you know, I mean,
yeah.
But I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
I'm just speaking from my own personal experience. And then after one night, she was like,
"No, I've had that happen.
Never showers. Like, I can't have this." I changed my way.
Well, my shower schedule changed after COVID started.
Oh man, I have wearing the same pajama pants I put on back in March of last year. Never took them off.
Well, I was wondering if I should wear pants tonight. You know, I didn't know whether I was going to have to stand up for any reason during the recording.
Yeah, no. Yeah, there's yes. No, you really don't have to.
I do have pants on, by the way.
Okay, I was about to throw the Gen Z challenge at you. Like, can you do your you have to do this podcast for 90 minutes with your balls on fire. Can you do it?
Oh my God! Oh wow!
We could have young people on this show. They'd be like, "I'll do it right now." How many TikTok views do I get? No Gen Zers listen.
TikTok. I'd love to get excited about stuff like TikTok. I really would. I'd love to get excited about that. I feel like I'm missing out.
There's a lot of cool stuff on TikTok, actually. My fiance got addicted to it. But mainly like looking at zoo animals, which I love. It's like, so, because I was under the impression that it was all like dancing idiots. But it's, no, there's a lot of cool stuff on there, you know, as well. Just,
you know, I became such a bleeding heart. I can't even really go to the zoo anymore because I just think about how depressed all the animals must be.
Yeah, but there's a flip side to that coin, right? Because I understand what you're saying 100%. But if you got an animal that is not going to survive in the wild or is an endangered species, I'm like, thank God for a zoo, right? For instance, like here in San Francisco, we love the zoo, and there's like a couple of bears that were rescued when they were cubs because they lost their mother, and there was some sort of circumstance where they weren't able to like function in the wild, right? And so they brought them here, and they've never really known anything else. And they grew up here, and there's an actual bald eagle here that had its wings damaged that can't fly. Well, that thing would be fucked in nature, right? So, you know, when there's instances like that,
that's good.
I agree with you. I think when they're animals that are rescued, right, or animals that are rescued from cruel situations like this Tiger King scumbag and all that kind of stuff, and they go to a zoo and a habitat and they can breed and whatever, like. And especially endangered species. I think that's great. Now, if you're just going out and grabbing some wild animals, you know, ripping them away from their pack or whatever and throwing them, you know, in a cage somewhere, I'm not down with that at all. I mean, I'm definitely not that kind of person. But I think I tend to hope, be optimistic about. I think a lot of zoos actually, especially in this day and age, right? It's not like the 1800s or early 1900s where it was just like, come behold the spectacle and nothing matters but man. You know, we're much more, I think, sensitive species.
Well, we create more habitat for them within the zoos.
Yeah.
If we can replicate their habitat to some degree, then we're doing a better job.
Agreed. I think they should have a good amount of space and all that, but. Vic, were you about to say something?
It looked like he was.
I was just laughing. You mentioned Tiger King, and I read an article about him accepting help from the chick he supposedly tried to.
Carol Baskins?
Yeah. She's going to help him get out of jail.
Oh,
so
Jesus Christ! Now going to end up getting married. What a story! Did you? And then she'll kill
wow.
him. Did you ever see that? That was like the biggest documentary ever, docuseries in the beginning of the pandemic. Did you watch that, Stephen?
I was hearing about that, but I never saw it.
It sucks you in. It's pretty addicting, and it's pretty ridiculous, but you can't help but watch it. But anyway, so this chick Carol Baskins, there was this rival of these two, the kind of people that we don't like, that just keep animals in captivity and use them to, charge money for people to come see tigers in captivity bullshit. And not good. Neither one of these people were good people. And the one guy hated this other chick so much that he was plotting her death, and now he's in jail. Like, that's a thing. And and then this chick, on the other hand, apparently her husband years ago just vanished. Nobody knows what happened. And there's a theory that she killed him and fed him to her tigers. And but anyway, I saw this absolutely hilarious meme the other day that said something about the girl posted and said, "Why is it that my husband can fart like 59 times in a row and it's okay, but if I fart once, he looks at me like I'm Carol Baskins?" I just thought that was hilarious.
Oh gosh.
Oh man, well, dude, I think we've actually successfully completed a. Now that we talked about some man stuff, farting and porn, I think we've well-rounded South Park,
well-rounded.
Yeah, we talked about it all.
A little bit of everything.
So, Stephen,
yeah,
dude.
it.
So May 15th. Now, I'll be honest. Like, there's no way in hell this thing's going to air before May 1st. That's where we got a backlog of these technical catastrophes.
Oh, that's why I see.
We got to figure out here. But May 15th. Yeah, totally cool to plug that show. I'm going to be in Austin, free that night, dude. I'd love to be there, man. I hope.
Cool.
Are you going to have me posting about that, or are you going to be advertising that?
Yes, I will. I'll be. Well, I can just, since I know you're going to be around, I'll message you directly. But I'll be posting it on Nextdoor and Facebook and Instagram. On the 15th, it's going to be Ernie Durawa and Chris Alcaraz on bass and vocals, and Jimmy Soma on guitar.
Oh, man, hell yeah, dude! That's awesome. And this is the driveway thing, yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's killer, dude.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Ernie was interested in coming over. It's like anything you involve Ernie with is going to be a good show.
Ernie's no fool. He lives south. If you lived in Georgetown, Ernie'd be like, "Yeah, I can't make it. Sorry."
Right.
No, man, that sounds awesome.
Or he'd need a guarantee.
Yeah. Well, I can't say I would blame him either, But no, that's killer, man. That sounds super exciting. So, we'll try to get this out and advertise that. I'll definitely looking forward to that. Anywhere specific people look for you? Just Facebook, Instagram. Maybe one more time, just mention some of the bands you're playing with.
Oh, okay. The Hot Texas Swing Band, Extreme Heat, Curtis Calderon Group in San Antonio. We're going to do another Tony Harrison performance at the Central Market here in June. Really nothing else at this point. Just whatever we can bring to the driveway.
Awesome, man. I love it.
And yeah, just being able to bring different musicians, keep it interesting, trying not to bore the neighbors. Although most of the neighbors are always just happy that we do anything at all.
That'd be
they're so appreciative. We're so glad you're doing this, because they just want something different.
Yeah, well, it's not like you're a death metal band out there practicing in your driveway. I mean, it's accessible music that, most people can dig on.
That heavy metal piece. I'm forgetting your buddy's name now.
Blaine. I was just going to mention. So
Blaine.
That whole thing that you came in and tracked sax on, which was probably 2 years ago now. This thing has been this long running on and off.
It's been a while.
Obviously, nothing was done in 2020, and we just got back on.
Well, I was sure that you had scrapped my tracks, and that's why I hadn't heard from you.
Have you seen it? No, you actually, there's a trailer, so you probably saw it. It features your sax solo.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm on the trailer, and I was so proud to be a part of something that you could call heavy metal, I mean,
don't
would you
know
call
what
that
I'd
heavy
call it.
metal?
It's a very interesting EP, and I'm so excited for this thing to come out. We're actually right now, we're in the final mixing stages. We've got a video premiere scheduled for May, and so we're looking at kind of a June release for the 6 songs, which is almost like an album. I mean, they're kind of long songs. Some of them have several, part A, B, C, D type thing. So it's almost like
oh wow!
I almost see it as a 3 and 3 vinyl.
This is the iTunes one.
No, this is called a Stasis. So this is a project that Blaine, had been writing for several years back, and I got involved, and then we started. We have just kind of been picking at it and recording it over the years. And Steven came in and played sax on one of the tunes, and it's finally.
Well, it was a really interesting time signature, and it had that rougher feel to it.
I don't know some of the influences.
Yeah. But I have my oldest brother is heavily into music that sounds like that. Let's just say, and I was very proud to be able to share that with him.
Thanks, man, dude. I can't wait for this to be out, and that whole solo section is fantastic. And I would say it's kind of like I would call it a kind of a progressive rock sort of vibe. Like maybe I think there's some influence from like King Crimson and those types of groups, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, dude, I can't wait for it to be out. And I forgot that was that's so cool, man, that you're on there. So I'll keep you posted on that. Yeah, very cool. All right, brother.
Yeah.
Steven Vague.
All right.
Yes, we made it through a podcast with no technical difficulties. It took us 50 episodes, but
I enjoyed the heck out of it.
Cool, dude. All right, man.
All right. Congratulations to all. Well, thanks a bunch, and we'll talk to you later on.
Okay, don't hang up, so to speak, just so we make sure that everything uploads.
Okay.
This has been Skunk Manhattan and Victor Ramos. I always fuck up our names. Who cares? Episode 51 or whatever the fuck it is. Bye.
Big Vic.
Big Vic.